Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday from wherever you're joining. Wow, everybody looks so sharp and snappy
Thursday.
today.
It's
It's
Thursday.
Thursday already. It's Thursday. My goodness. I'm still stuck on Wednesday, clearly. So, welcome everyone. It's so good to see you here. We have a very special guest that many of you recognize. I'm going to introduce her, reading her short bio. Louise Harnby is a professional fiction editor with over 30 years of publishing experience. She
30.
specializes in she specializes in working with independent crime, thriller, and mystery writers. She is an advanced professional member of the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading and co-hosts the editing podcast with Denise Cowell, who you've all had the pleasure to meet a few weeks ago. She has books, she has courses, she's mentoring editors, and she's really at the forefront, I think, of what a lot of editors like us would like to do and maybe are not always prepared to do or have the courage to do things. So we welcome you today, Louise, and we're here to learn about you and your life and how you got to where you are.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I started off as an editor. I left uni and I worked as a marketing manager for a couple of scholarly publishers for about a decade. And then I had a baby. And so I retrained as a proofreader because I wanted to have some flexibility. And at that time, I was working solely for scholarly publishers because that was my background. And those projects had very clear parameters, and on the whole, the rates being offered fitted my needs. And then over time, my website was generating more and more inquiries from indie fiction editors, and so I sort of slid into fiction. And I'm in a situation now where I'm doing completely what I wasn't doing when I started out. I hardly ever do proofreading anymore. I don't work for the same types of clients ever. But yeah,
Interesting.
so
So
it was.
you really, so I think you and Denise too, great examples of this is where I started off, this was my baseline and what I thought I was going to do, and then kind of seeing the opportunity and pivoting and taking some risks. And I'm going to take also a step back and mention that the reason I met you was because of volunteering. It was EFA Con 2019 in Chicago.
Yeah.
I was probably about a year into officially freelance editing, and I was volunteering for the conference, and I was at the registration desk, and I was checking people in with a bunch of other volunteers, and then you like show up right at the registration desk, and I was in that like moment, like, oh my god, like keynote speakers, Louise Harnby, I've been hearing the podcast, and then you lingered and we talked, and then I can't remember how it happened, but we ended up going out to dinner with a group of editors.
You
And
basically looked after me, Linda. You looked after me for that whole conference because I came there and I didn't really know. I knew people, I recognized people's names, but you took me under your wing and you looked after me and you made me feel like I was with a little. There was you, and there was
Kelly
Tia.
Holgren, yeah,
Yeah.
Tia,
And so there was
Tiara.
and so I had a little family suddenly to hang out with, and it was like a little network. But
It
it
was.
and you immediately made me feel so welcome and like I wasn't alone, and I was only staying. Oh God, it was mad. I was only staying. I literally flew into Chicago and did the conference and flew out the next day. I'm never doing that again. Don't do that, anybody. Don't do that.
But
Um,
it was excellent though, because one of the things that I really appreciated was saying yes, because you could have been like, no, thank you, and walked away. But you really, and you were coming from another country into a different market of editors, which is whether
yeah,
we like it or
yeah,
not, it's
yeah,
two different like editing markets.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you were interested in who EFA was, who the members were, and you took us up on the offer for dinner and drinks and cheese curds, fried cheese curds, which were great.
Why wouldn't I?
And
Oh,
then, yeah, and then time went by. We kept listening to your podcast, and then Brittany, who's here, which I'm excited to see too, we were talking about a book, and we reached out to you for some information, and you gave us some really positive feedback and offered to give us a blurb or a quote, and then got invited to be on your podcast. So some of the things that we talk about here in this group is how those spontaneous connections that happen will pay off 2 or 3 years or 4 years down the line.
Yeah, yeah.
And from when I met you, that you were the keynote speaker, you had I think the podcast was already going back then at that time. I'm pretty sure it was
What year was that? What year was?
2019.
Yeah, well, I think we started
Yeah.
in, yeah, it would have been new, but yeah.
Yeah. So the podcast was going, and then you had your book, the omnibus book, which I ended up getting, which was like the collection of all your books in one. And I had them, I printed it out also.
Basically those two.
Yes. And that was so helpful because the book that you wrote had, I didn't know first that you, as an editor, you could write something and publish it and do that. So that was like wake up call number one. Wake up call number two was you were sharing things that you had done or had experienced or colleagues of yours had experienced, and you just kind of
Mm.
laid it out in very plain language. And that's when the light bulb went up for me that I can do something else that's just not always editing. And so can you walk us a little bit maybe through, like you said, you started off as proofreading, you
Mm. Mm.
and what were like the next steps that you took and how did you get the courage to kind of take those next steps?
So I think it probably started because I was creating free content initially via my blog, mainly on editorial business building, because, and this had happened, I'd noticed this when I started sliding into fiction. There wasn't, I needed, when I started doing more fiction work, I realized that I needed more guidance on fiction line craft, and there wasn't anything out there aimed at someone like me. So I ended up writing it. And it was the same with the business building stuff. I couldn't find what I was looking for sort of all in one place. And so I just did a lot of writing and thinking and researching, and then um but what happened when I put it on the blog, it encouraged lots of people to get in touch with me, like editorial people. And sometimes on like a daily basis, people would be asking me for guidance. And I just thought, I can't just be emailing people all the time. I need something bigger. I need something structured content that focuses on business planning and business promotion. And so that's where those first books came from. And look, I'm not going to say I wasn't nervous about publishing those. I was. I was really nervous. But I figured enough people are asking you what you think, so why not? I'm scared, but I'll do it anyway. And that's what I've just continued to do over the years. I produce stuff when I spot gaps that feel like gaps for me. And so now I have a suite of books and courses and that focus on editorial business and fiction craft, plus of course the blog and the editing podcast, which I do with Denise. But it was kind of organic.
What I like
And
about what you're saying is that you're saying that you identify the gap and you create the content, but it's not like you're creating the content to sell stuff to people. You're creating it because there's a need for you to have that content out there. And then
mm,
the byproduct is that that sells and it resonates with so many editors that find themselves in this. And so it's this trust thing that you're not creating it based on really doing any market research, or it's based on what you feel you need that you would like to know more of. So it comes very
yeah,
naturally. It's easy to write kind of like
yeah,
that,
it
if
is.
you
It's
will.
quite organic like that. Although, um, well, no, let's maybe sort of like we're going to chat about some tips later, aren't we? So I'll kind of bring that up then. But yeah, I mean, I think that I would say that I don't set out to write a book. I end up thinking, God, I wish I had the book on that. And then and then I write the book.
Totally.
Like there was
Totally.
no, but I don't recall their book about sort of networking for freelancers. And surely that's what you and Brittany found. Where is it? Oh,
Yeah.
it's not there. So let's make it. And it's not like you're coming to it from a blank page in a sense. The pages are sort of there in your head because of the writing or the reading or the talking, the presenting that you're already doing. So it's very wrapped up with kind of the that sort of business development, I suppose, and continuing professional development, thinking, how am I gonna, if I can't find the answers to what I need, but there is something that I need to, there's a way in which I need to progress here. If I find it useful, like putting this into some sort of framework, other people might too. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
And
did.
and that's really true. And I think it just creates trust because I think, yeah, they could have gone to, ChatGPT or some other Claude or Gemini or Google and been like, hey, how do I do this? But if,
Mm,
Brittany Dowdell has something or Melissa has something or Sue has something that they've written and they're an expert and they edited this, then I am going to be more inclined myself to trust that voice of
mm,
experience than trust
definitely.
a machine. So I think that it's still irreplaceable content and still valuable content that can.
Yeah, and that's a really good point actually you mentioned there, I think, Linda, that idea that whenever you do this, whether you're charging for it or whether you're giving it away for free, you are promoting the human value of information, sharing information, which is, yeah, I use AI sometimes to brainstorm with, but there's nothing like sitting and chatting with a friend about it or a trusted colleague. And and that's kind of in a sense what you do every time you create content. Whether you're sharing it on a blog or a podcast or via a book or a community space, you're being available, you're being visible, you're being human.
Yeah, and
That's nice, isn't it?
empathetic. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you're editing, you start proofreading. How did you decide that these were the genres that you wanted to focus on?
So it's an interesting one because so now I edit only crime fiction, only thrillers, only mysteries. I only work at line level and I only work with indie authors. So this is completely not where I was when I started out. And I when I decided that I wanted to 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 niche, it was very much of a sort of a brand building exercise. And I chose an area that I love because there's nothing better than working on stuff that you love. You love reading, you love um because you kind of invested in it. And so and the other thing I would say is that my clients are quite distinct as well. I kind of realized over the years as more and more people were coming to me. I wish I'd known this much earlier. I really do. My clients, not your clients, my clients tend to be relatively middle class, middle aged professional men from the US, the UK, or Australia, and they've got enough disposable income to enable them to write in their spare time. And that was something that when I realized that was kind of a bit of a game changer because now you've got something you can wrap a brand identity around, if that makes sense. I've got this sort of avatar and or persona in my head who fits that demographic, who I always have in mind when I'm adding content to my website or doing other kinds of marketing. And my brand doesn't necessarily appeal to everyone, and that's fine. I don't need to work with everyone, just enough people to fill my schedule and who'll pay my prices. But yeah, it's odd because I came to it from the point of view of what do I like, but I also had it in my mind that I wanted to specialize in something. I wanted to really focus in on something, not just because it helps people understand what I do better, because it helps me communicate better what I do. It's really
Yeah.
hard, sort of talking in generalizations all the time. Whereas as soon as you can start to say, I'm into this or I'm into that. So yeah, it was,
It
it,
feels like this advice that this business coach gave me once last year, and he was like, what's the low hanging fruit for you?" When I was kind of asking like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, and he's like, well, what brings the most revenue? What's the most work that
yeah,
you get?
yeah, yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, and so a part of me, the creative part, was like, oh, but I'm not interested in the more revenue. I'm interested in the more creative part. And he was like, great, but that's not where the money is gonna. If you already have proof that this is where the money's at, and the clients that are coming to you, and it comes easy to you, focus on that. Like, get
Yeah,
that
yeah,
really
yeah.
settled, and then
Yeah.
when you have that, do the other love, passion projects maybe that you want to do. And so what
And
comes naturally, I think.
that's such a good point because the other thing is, like I know that for some people they think, oh, working with indie authors, that's, they're going to have no money. But that's not true. There are different types of indie authors, and some of them are the low-hanging fruit. And for me, it's the ones who have got the disposable income to pay me what I want to earn. They're not going to go, oh, you're a bit too expensive. I don't mind if someone thinks I'm too expensive. I'm just not going to work with them. So,
Hmm.
so it's kind of like it's about seeing that connection, isn't it, between what do I like doing, or either this works and therefore I'm going to learn to like it because I like what it does for me, or I
Hmm.
like doing this and I can make it pay. There has to be
Yeah.
one or the other, but you definitely, I think you need to see that connection.
Yeah. And you've been able to set up for yourself too, and I'm taking information from your book, business processes. And one of the things for me that was an aha moment was when you said that you charge a deposit. If somebody wants to get on your calendar, you charge a deposit
Mm,
months in advance. And I was coming before from the I'm just excited to get hired, or somebody wants to work with
mm,
me, and so I
mm,
don't, I will kind of adapt to their needs and their
mm,
rules. And then I've lost or I picked up the wrong clients that way, or
mm.
I've lost clients because they weren't ready, or they said they didn't take it seriously. So being able, this charging a deposit to get on someone's calendar when you're a freelance editor was a game changer for me to really set apart the types of people I wanted to work with.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a little bit about that? Because did that come naturally to you too? Was that advice that you were given? Did
No, I learned the hard way. I had some lovely clients who I really enjoyed working with. It only happened a few cases, but it was really tricky because so I had this one guy who's a really successful self-publisher, but he kept like, he'd get in touch a week before and say, sorry, I can't make it. I'm really sorry, I've got writer's block. And I'd be like, now I'm twiddling my thumbs. And I thought, I can't have that. If someone wants to book me, they need to give me 500 quid up front, end of. And that stops it's not intentional, but there are people out there who don't necessarily respect you as an editorial business owner. And so I thought, I need my clients, no matter how well intentioned they are, I need them to show commitment. I need them to so I got my fingers burnt. That's why I introduced that. And I was nervous about it. I thought, is this going to put people off again? I wasn't quite in that mindset of ready to accept that if it's putting people off, they're not the right clients. But I did it anyway, and it's not been a problem. I even had a situation where a guy had to pull out, and I know he didn't pull out. He wanted to delay, and in that case, I would have let the booking deposit roll forward. I wasn't. I was all right with that. He gave me plenty of notice, and he said, "No, no, fair's fair. We start again. You keep that £500, and I will pay you another £500 booking fee. Your time is valuable. That's your job." And I realized, yeah, you're the kind of person I want to work with. So I would really recommend that people think about, giving signals to potential clients about what your value is, and reminding people that this is, a cancelled contract 2 weeks
yeah,
before that isn't necessarily enough time to get new work. So,
yeah,
so yeah, they have to pay that, and I've not found it a barrier.
yeah. And then when I started implementing after hearing that you've been doing this, I was like, oh, is this the scariest thing ever? But nobody bats an eye. Like the people that
Yeah,
really want to
yeah,
work with you, nobody bats an eye. They just
yeah,
like put down the
yeah,
deposit, and it's so yeah.
yeah.
So, in these things that you've been with the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading for a long time now, which, by the way, what a phenomenal group of editors. And some of the classes I've taken through the Institute have been, again, game changing in my editing processes. They've heard me in this group recommend Hester Hickton's class, the efficient editing class,
Oh, yeah.
so much
Hey,
because of the value that it has.
yeah.
How did you, when you started working with the Chartered, with a CIEP, and then you're doing the podcast with Denise, were there any things that came up with you that, again, you wanted to create more content or add more value or weed out clients? That knowledge of working with other editors, and this was not one of the questions that I told you I would ask you, by the way, but when you started relating to other colleagues and kind of networking and sharing ideas, was there any takeaways from those that you decided to implement in your own business?
Uh, yeah, I can give you a few. They're small things, but again, it's a bit like the booking deposit. I started charging for sample edits. So yeah, again, someone has to pay me 1,000 words. I want 100 quid, and I'm probably going to put that up actually because nobody bats an eyelid. I think there's a little bit more I can squeeze out of them. I So that's something I do. I've also, over time, this isn't something that other colleagues all agree with, but it is something I've chosen to do. I'm transparent on my website about my fee per 1,000 words. And I can do that now because that's I realize that sometimes people work for clients where they're not the price setter. So like people who work for publishers, for example, the publisher decides what the fee is and you decide whether you're a price acceptor, but I'm
Yeah.
a price setter. And I know a lot of people are wary of doing that because they think again they might put people off. But I was hearing from some colleagues that they were going down that route, and so I definitely implemented that. I found Hester came on the podcast actually, and she was talking
Wow.
about sort of just more generally, but not just ripping off that course, but just more generally about efficient editing practices. And she was talking. What did she? I remember being horrified when she said that she does something in a certain way and thinking, I do not do that. And I feel a bit ashamed that I don't do that. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was something to do with, oh, I'm really
Leave
sorry.
it
I can't
leave it a
remember, but
mystery. We're all going to go and listen to the podcast.
I
And
know,
it's two
do you know,
episodes, so
it was
yeah.
something quite fundamental, and quite basic. I think it was sort of the order of play. It might have been the order in which she carried out certain tasks. And she said something, and there was a little light bulb moment for me where I thought, I might try that. Um, so yeah, I mean, whatever it is, it'll be in that course she runs. Eh, so
It was
I
y-
often pick up things, and I'll give you another example of a someone who came on the podcast and someone who I met at the EFA a few years ago. So there's this woman called Linda who very recently suggested to me and Denise that we should do ebooks of our this notes from the podcast, the book series that is a um comes off that podcast. And we hadn't got round to it because we were too busy. And Linda was saying, well, I found that, I get more sales of my ebooks and I think it's a good idea. And, we get better royalties on it. And so me and Denise went away and we were like, I looked at the figures. I said, like most of my book sales, I'm selling more paperbacks. All right, we'll leave it. We'll leave it. We haven't got time. We came back to it a few days later. Should we do that? Should we do that? Linda does that. Brittany does that. It's probably a good idea. Let's do that. So, we ended up paying for someone to do the work that we didn't have time to do. But because a colleague and friend had given us just a good idea. That's the thing about networking, isn't it? When you talk to other editors, someone comes up with a little nugget of information, and before you know it, you're like, interesting. And something because a human said it, even if you ignore it at the time or put it aside because you're too busy or whatever, you end up just getting around and doing it anyway.
yeah, and then one of the beautiful things about being a freelancer is that you can choose not to do it. Like 6 months down the road, it doesn't work out for
Yeah,
you, then you just
you
drop
change
it.
it, you just
So
pivot. The
yeah,
other thing I just want to mention is that because I'm actually the chair, I don't know what the equivalent role is in some of the US organizations, but so I'm a member of the CIEP, but I'm also its chair. And so I sit on like its board. And that's been an amazing experience in terms of helping me develop business acumen because we've got a chief executive officer who's a paid member of staff, and she is right on it in terms of looking at cost centers and what works, what doesn't work, and how you must prioritize. You cannot do everything. It doesn't matter if 3,000 people are screaming at you. If you can't afford it, if it's going to bankrupt, tough. You have to find another
yeah.
way, or you have to drop something and do something else instead. But like what you were talking a bit before, Linda, about deciding where your low hanging fruit are and just making good business decisions. So that's been a really valuable experience for me as well. Time consuming, but very valuable. So yeah.
And is being the chair, is that a volunteer position
Yeah.
also?
Yeah.
and again, and so what we and Brittany's here too, that she'll speak up to the volunteering aspect too. But volunteering is such, it just opens so many doors, and it just
Mm,
gives you so many
mm,
opportunities and learning experiences. So
yeah.
yeah, volunteering is still like a superpower, I think, in the networking world. So
Especially, because volunteering often in our world comes with responsibility. So it's not just volunteering that you can go, yeah, I'll do a little bit today. You've got responsibilities on your shoulders, and if you mess it up, you're going to harm people and organizations. So you have to do a good job. You have to be prepared to learn. You have to be prepared to listen and open your mind and acquire those new skills.
yeah,
Again,
That's
bit
all,
scary,
yeah,
but absolutely 100% worth it.
it
100%.
always pays off. So suppose in a pretend world there's a new grad from uni that's decided that they want to go into editing. They attend one of the CIEP meetings. They're like, what classes do I take? I don't know. Like, what should I be focusing on? Or maybe you somebody who's been editing for about 2 years and they've got the skill set, or they have their editing certificate, or they've self-taught themselves how to copy edit
Mm.
business, and they're ready, but the work's not coming in. Do you have two or three tips that you would say if you could go back now and do things differently? What would be two or three things that somebody could do, or you would do if you could go back?
Yeah, I got three things. So we've already touched on this, but I think you should really think about emphasizing a niche. It makes you more findable. It helps you stand out. It helps you target your messaging more specifically. So, it's that thing about like, if you just say you're an editor, so what? But if you say you're an editor who specializes in business or science or romance or sci-fi or crime like me, it helps the right people understand immediately that you get them, that you're invested in the same thing that they're invested in. So that's my first thing. The second thing is that when you get your website, and you should have a website, if you haven't got a website, get yourself a website. Make sure the messaging on that focuses on the problems you solve for the clients you want to attract. So lists of qualifications and information about you as a person are absolutely worth having. But the thing I always think about that stuff is that it's about you and how amazing you are. But when you use your website to provide help and support, say via various resources, useful content, you're making the messaging about your client and how amazing you want them and their writing to be. And that's a really powerful thing to do. And it evokes positive emotions and builds trust. And that means more work. And then my third thing is something else that we alluded to earlier. Being generous is really powerful, but make sure you understand the connection between the things you do or give for free and your business's long-term health. So if you're creating lots of free blog content for writers, for example, could be any audience, but great. But understand that the goal is to generate bookings for your paid editing services from that audience because you've built trust with them. If you're investing a lot of time in creating free audio or audio visual content, work out how you might convert that into allied products that you sell, like Denise and I have done with our notes from the podcast series, or like Linda and Brittany have done with their networking book. If you're providing free community support for editors, think about how you can extend that into paid for membership communities with added benefits. So the TNS models this. So does John Asperian with his Espresso LinkedIn community. Or fourth example would be if you're doing free talks or presentations for editing societies, lovely, but can you repurpose that as paid for webinar content or a course, perhaps with expanded support or resources or model answers or something? Ultimately, I just think that, look, I've been told how kind and generous I am so many times, and make no mistake, getting pats on the back is lovely, but it isn't enough. Ultimately, being incredibly generous must translate into something that will pay for the mortgage, the health insurance, the food on the table, and the clothes on your back. And if it doesn't, you need a rethink. We always, I guess, that the message there is we always need to see the bigger business picture, what the end goals are, so that even when we're being generous, we're still making our businesses work for us and ensure they're sustainable. And I didn't discover that. I think it took me, I've been working as a freelancer since 2006. And I think it's only been in the last sort of decade or so that I've learnt that, and I've learnt it more and more. And I wish I had known that earlier. I wish I had known that from the get-go. I'm not saying I would have had the confidence from the get-go to do it, but I at least it would have been in my head.
Yeah, and one of the things we were talking about before we started recording and everybody joined was that sometimes these things there is having fear of doing things is normal because like you said, I don't know that when I started off I would have had the courage to be like, you must pay me X amount for a booking fee
Mm,
because I'd be like, oh, but I'm brand new, nobody knows me, and but then talking it out with a friend or a colleague that you trust gives you sometimes that strength to do that and maybe even pursue a project together. So one of the things we were
yeah,
mentioning was anything that might seem fearful is easier when you do it with someone else, and that's
yeah,
having
yeah.
that backup. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how maybe the because you and Denise have such a great work relationship, but it's also such a friendship. So how do you when what do you guys consult on? What do you like to share? How is she like a sounding board to some of your ideas?
Yeah, I think we both work that way with each other, definitely. Like if if I'm doing something like for my business rather than our joint thing together, I might be scared and she'll just go on, do it now. Do it right. Put that on your website right now, and I'll sit there with you and watch while you publish it. And you can go and have a crisis of confidence, and I'll just be right here, and we'll have a cup of tea and a chat, and I'll do the same for her. So we just kind of kick each other up the backside. And the other thing that we've often said to each other is like, you know what? Even if it fails, even if people are laughing at us behind our backs, because all that imposter syndrome stuff that's going on, that's saying like people will think you're stupid, people will think you're not experienced enough, people will think, who do you think you are? You just ignore those voices because and we've got quite it's sort of warm and fuzzy about this, but in those situations, I think we'll both decide, yeah, those people can think what they like. Like, I love you and you love me, so let's just do it anyway. And because you won't laugh at me, the people who count in your life won't laugh at you. They'll cheer you on. And as for clients, potentially, they won't know you're new unless you tell them. So unless you're splattering all over your website, oh, by the way, here's my book. I've got no experience and I'm not very good and I'm really nervous. Unless you're announcing that on your website, which you would be bonkers to do, you can feel all that stuff inside, but just don't tell, just only tell the people you trust. Because, it's nobody else's business how long whether you've got 2 years experience or 20. There's people can be brilliant at promoting their businesses, and they can be really fresh to a thing. Or they can have been doing it for 50 years, and they're introverted. So,
Yeah.
just, yeah, I mean, I just think that whole thing of finding a good trusted friend who, Denise is kind of a bit like my editorial husband. Like, I expect my husband, if I'm having a bad day, or if I've made a mistake, or I've done something silly, or I've let myself down, or I've let someone else down, I know that he'll forgive me. He'll love me anyway, because that's the deal with us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I expect the same from my friend, and that's why we work so well together. Just a little thing to add on to that, though. I think finding the right person to do other stuff with is really important. So, there's a reason why you and Brittany do stuff together, and there's a reason why me and Denise do stuff together, because there's a mutual care and respect. And so just if you're going to do stuff with other people, take a little bit of time to make sure it's the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember Brittany Dowdle, you can unmute yourself by the way, since you're I still remember when Brittany told me, there's this thing called the Welcome Program AFA, and they've asked me to direct it. But I was thinking, like, if you would co-direct it with me, maybe we could do it together. And I remember thinking to myself that day, like, I don't know the first thing about directing a program and all these new editors, and I've with the organization for maybe a year.
Yeah.
But then it was like, but if she like, I really like her, and she's amazing. So she's telling me maybe there's something to that I should say yes and be like, okay. So, Brittany,
Yeah.
yeah, do you remember that? Can you speak to
I
it?
absolutely remember that. And we had been talking for quite a while. We had been doing some volunteer stuff with the diversity initiative for a while. So I feel like, we had a really good rapport right from the start, right from our um, cappuccino and chocolate croissant on the beach. And that's always a good start to
Lovely.
anything. But I think that like we had a really good connection. And as we worked together, even just over those first several months, just kind of casually doing volunteer work together and stuff, we both got a sense of each other, of the way we worked, the quality of our work. So when I was being asked to do something that like I really believed in that program, but I knew because of like other responsibilities and other things that it would be hard for me to take it on by myself. And also one of the things I love about Linda is that while we have a lot in common, she has some strengths that I don't in terms of, being maybe more
Such a
outgoing,
good
or
point.
like she's just really wonderful with talking with people and being comfortable doing it. And I thought that putting all of our strengths together, we could do a really great job together. And so that's
Mm.
why I invited her. And she absolutely just like it was the best thing ever. We did so much together. And then she just continued to kind of flourish from there and take things in her own direction. So I love what you're saying, Louise, about it being important to make sure that you're embarking on things with kind of someone who's the right fit. But then when you do find that fit, like value it so much because it's
Mm.
really wonderful to have.
And you made such a good point there about recognizing where the value is in having differences, because you know Denise and I definitely have sort of different takes on something sometimes, and that's great because you're not just in your own echo chamber. And it also means that when you're divvying up work, that different people can do different things. So, like, like Denise is much more in. I like doing the writing side of things. Denise likes doing the editing and the technical side of things. So that's great because we haven't got skills gaps or so many skills gaps. So
Yeah.
it's such a lovely thing to work with another the human. Just one other little thing I wanted to that you reminded me when you were speaking there about making things easier. Another thing that we always say is, me and Denise is we use the phrase just one thing. So like sometimes when you come along to sessions like this, or you read a book and you think, oh my God, yeah, there's all these ideas, but there's so much, and it becomes overwhelming. So so just start with one thing and do that, and then do another thing and do another thing. And if you just sort of like, you know, do that whole climbing Mount Improbable thing, before you know it, you're at the top, or you're halfway up, or wherever. But you're not
Yeah.
floundering at the bottom, going, "Oh, there's so many things." None of us can do everything, not all at once. So you do one thing, and then you do another. So that's another
Yeah.
another
I
idea.
think that, yeah, that's really, and then the other thing I'm going to say that it's when you're working with a partnership and when we're with a welcome program, if something goes wrong, you can always be like, well, talk to Brittany. It was like, all right.
You can blame the other person, absolutely.
That was Brittany's
Or
idea.
or you can sit there in shame and despair together, because like,
Yeah, oh,
it's being miserable with another
absolutely.
person is so much nicer than feeling miserable on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's way better than AI too, because like I can pick Brittany's, like I don't know the amount of times we text each other during the week, just with ideas or comments or, and it's always sparking. It's like this, these cogs that fit together and they keep rolling and the ideas keep coming. And so
Yeah,
it's a constant. It's
yeah,
a constant for
yeah.
sure. So I'm going to open it up to questions now from the group. I hope everybody's prepared. Does anyone want to start with any comments or feedbacks or anything that you've learned from the Louise from the podcast? I might ask Alan first because Alan, we've been talking about the podcast and Louise and Denise for a while.
I love it. Hi, Louise.
Oh, thanks, Alan. Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it a couple of years ago, I think, and it's fantastic. Love listening
Oh,
to you
thank
guys.
you.
Yeah. Um, well, okay. I don't exactly have a question prepared, but I do have one top of mind. I think a lot of us here in this community are on the earlier side of our editing careers. And I know that for me, like this is about year 3 for me, which includes like super slow year 1, trying to just take classes and get clients and get a little bit of work. So, still pretty new. And I think I'd like to hear like the transition between like total newbie into something more, something more experienced, where you've got, you've got a bunch of, or at least a good handful of projects under your belt. You've established kind of a network within the editing community. You're kind of starting to look at ways to take the business up past that initial. And I'm just wondering if there's anything, from your experience that was a real key for you, or a real problem, or that was just part of you kind of making that transition from noob to sort of intermediate.
I think branding. I know I talked about that in one of my 3 tips, but for me, Alan, it was a game changer. Like having a really clear sense of my own brand identity, so that it just took all the work of thinking out, oh, how do I communicate with people? How do I what kind of things might I write about? Or if you're interested in content marketing, or who should I write to, or where should I advertise, or um what would be the best design? Once I went through a very specific process, and I'm sorry, I am going to plug this, but you don't have to do it through me. There are other marketing organizations that offer help on branding. So I have a course called Branding for Business Growth, and it's based on a framework that I used from that was taught to me by 2 professional marketers. And it's a it's a framework. It's not just sort of like sitting there thinking la 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 la. You actually go through certain steps, and hopefully at the end of it, you come out with going, oh, all right. And what it gives you it just saves time, because you start to be able to you stop thinking in terms of I'm a newbie, and you start thinking in terms of I'm I'm an editor solving problems for these people. So it's interesting to hear, you're still framing when you talked to me just now, you talked very much in terms of where you are in your business, which is great. As long as when you're talking to the world that you need to maybe start trying to put a different hat on, and having a really solid, firm idea of what your brand identity is helps you do that kind of more personal introspective stuff about where you are in your business, and the kind of thing you can do in a safe space like this helps you put that to one side and slip into kind of editorial business mode. And it just saves a ton of time as well, because I'm never thinking, oh, what font shall I use? What should that ad look like? What colors should I use? Or, if I want to do a little brochure, like, what should that look like? Because it's all predetermined now in a sense. I know the 3 or 4 colors that are going to be used. If I create a new page on my site, I know what it's going to look like roughly. It just saves you a ton of time, but I think it gets you in a really strong mindset, a positive, forward-thinking, client-focused mindset. I'm not at all uh, undermining anything that you just, or the way in which you framed your current consideration, because there's not, that's the thing about spaces like this, that one needs to be able to reflect safely and personally. That's the whole benefit of it. But it's learning to wear that other hat with confidence. That's what my branding work really did for me. And I was scared about having a solid brand identity. I really was. I just thought, oh, but I get offers of work from these people, and these people, they're not going to contact me anymore. But I tracked my data. I looked at who was visiting my site and how many inquiries I was getting. And as soon as I had a very, very firm brand that people could understand who I was and why I was a good fit for them, it I earned more money, I had a fuller schedule, and it did change things for me. I can't promise you that, I can't guarantee you that's going to be the way for everybody, but this is what my marketing coaches told me would happen. And I went, ooh, really? And then I did it. I didn't do it straight away, actually. What I did was I first just specialized in fiction. So I transitioned. I went from like doing anything, I transitioned to fiction, and then I finally bit the bullet and went, I'm a crime fiction editor. Suck it up.
Yeah.
So you can do it over time, but that would be my advice to you, Alan, is like really sort of focus on your brand and who you are, who Alan Burns is and why he's special and what clients what problems his clients have got and how you're going to solve them for him and how you communicate that. Hope
That's
that
Thank you.
helps.
huge.
Great. Very helpful.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, I have Canva. I have a paid professional Canva account, which is for graphics and stuff. They
Mm.
just launched a whole new series within Canva where you can put in 2 or 3 brand colors and they will give you 30 templates with your brand colors for Facebook, for Instagram, for your website, for your, like, I had a little head explosion yesterday because I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
Canva is
Yeah.
just to die for.
Yeah, yeah, they have this whole new package now. So,
Yeah.
excellent way to like apply the branding. After you've taken the class and figured out what it is, then you can really fine tune everything, all the graphic stuff,
Yeah,
and leave
yeah.
it to them. So, great. Who wants to go next?
I have a question.
Ask me anything. Go on then, Melissa.
Um, Mine kind of follows Alan's, which I loved that question, Alan, so thank you. I I think I've had a very short experience with editing so far, but I went into it also expecting to be an academic editor, and I'm being lured away by other things. And I was just curious what your experience was, how you found your niche, because right now I'm just in this period of questioning, noticing what I enjoy, but still feeling like I lack the experience to be able to like dial down into something as specific as crime fiction. So what was that journey like for you?
So I guess it does really follow on from what I was saying to Alan, that it was so what I was noticing was that I was getting more fiction people coming to me because I was creating content. And the more content I created that was servicing those people, then the more that kept coming. So I don't know what kind of marketing you do, Melissa, but and have you tried any content marketing? Have you tried writing solutions on your
No, it
website or anything like
terrifies
that? Okay, okay. So listen, all I will say is if you want, would you like to work with indie authors? What kind, tell me, what do you, forget at the moment how experienced you are. I don't care how experienced you are. I care. What do you like reading? What do you
um,
love reading? What's your favorite genre?
literary fiction.
Okay.
But
So,
I would be kind of terrified. I haven't had an opportunity to edit anything like that. I find it, I would be excited but scared. What I've
what
done
about if you
so
were to
far,
proofread?
what?
Would you proofread literary fiction?
Yes.
Okay. There are
Okay.
literary fiction editors out there who would like a specialist proofreader who the question is, how do you convince people that you are into literary fiction? So maybe you don't, maybe you're too scared at the moment to create content that um where you give your own advice. But maybe you could create content that curates other people's advice. So like maybe you've read craft resources or about literary fiction that you think were really good. So maybe you could do a review of some of those, or maybe there are certain authors within the literary fiction world that you love. Maybe you could write content that explores why you love those books and what strikes you. And dare I say it, might you even have a little brainstorm with ChatGPT if you're feeling nervous about it? Like maybe ask it even just to give you a scope and sequence. These are the things, Melissa, you should be. You know how it'll answer. It'll answer, oh, that's a great question, Melissa. Thank you for that. Uh, and then it will give you maybe just some bullet points, like these are interesting things to address. And then you go and just write, and maybe find a friend and just share it with them and say, what would you like? Maybe you could write an article that explains what the difference is between copy editing and proofreading and literary fiction. So you're using the keywords literary fiction in all this content, but you don't have to be any more of an expert to write that stuff than you already are. You're just showing people that that's what you love. And that's what I started doing. I started doing it with fiction. I focused on, I'm really into line editing. So I started just exploring different ways of talking about all the things that I was noticing in at that level. But you could do the same with proofreading or copy editing or but just talking about your genre. Then you're showing people, you're showing literary fiction writers, God, she's really into that. And then you're not just any old editor anymore. You're Melissa Rudder, the literary fiction proofreader or copy editor or whatever you want to do. And you don't have, just because you do, like, let's say you specialize in proofreading now, maybe in 2 years' time, you'll decide that you feel more confident about offering other levels of editing. But I suppose the key is to start with what you love. If you want to make a move, if you want to give yourself a direction, then that's a really good place to start.
Yeah. One of the things that I think we've talked about here too is, and I tend to suggest this a lot, is if you read in the genre, like I read biography and memoir constantly, and I love it, and that's what I know, and that's what I like to edit. I like to write blog posts that say, like, here are the 3 things every writer should know about, writing their biography or writing their memoir. Or here are the 3 things writers get wrong about writing memoir. And within memoir, maybe it's like, here are 3 things. So I just give these short posts about 3 things that might be interesting about the genre I like editing. And it doesn't tell them I'm an expert. But it tells them clearly I know the genre and
you're interested in it.
Yeah. And so that just that's enough credibility for someone to trust you, as compared to somebody else who might say they edit nonfiction and memoir and they don't have any other information.
Yeah.
So that content marketing is huge, I think, Louise. I think
it's content marketing is shows rather than tells. Like, someone can have on their front page, I'm a specialist crime fiction editor. But when you write 3 things that crime 3 mistakes that crime, when you write a blog post, say, or an article, 3 mistakes that crime fiction editors write, or 3 tools crime fiction editors can use. It doesn't matter if romance editors use them too. It really doesn't. You're getting those keywords in, you're showing, what you're doing is you're showing people that you're engaged, where you're not telling them, you're showing them, you're helping them, you're creating solutions. And that's what content marketing is all about. It's creating solutions. And if you're already doing editing, you're already doing that work, then you have skills. You must do, otherwise she
does.
Yeah. So again, it's kind of what we were talking about with Alan. That's that mindset, like, just, okay, allow yourself to feel like, oh, I'm not very experienced yet. I'm new to this compared to that Louise Harnby who's like 58 and been around for donkey's years. Forget that. All the rest of the people are irrelevant on what their experience is. What matters is the message that you present. And if you think, you sit there at home and you tell yourself that you're inexperienced and you haven't got the right to be, helping people and creating useful content, by all means, you can tell yourself all that stuff, but then just go and do it anyway. Just try it. Try one thing. Just try one post. Like the tip that Linda gave there, like, just try that one thing. Put it on your website and look, I will give you 300 quid. No, I'll give you 500 quid if one person writes to you and laughs in your face. It's not going to happen. So I know I'm not going to lose my money, but I will. I'll send you I don't know, a direct bet transfer, so it'll be in dollars. If people mock you and laugh at you for being helpful, because they
Yeah,
won't. They won't. Do you
absolutely.
use in your editing at the moment, in your editing practice, are there three tools that you use? You don't need to tell me what they are, but think of three tools that you find really useful and that a self-editing author might also find useful. It might be a macro, it might be a dictionary, it might be an online resource. Just write a blog post about it. Put it on your
Yeah,
website. There you go. Job done. You're not
totally.
talking about you and how inexperienced you are. The author doesn't care about you. They care about their problems and whether you can solve them. So solve their problems and leave your experience at home or your lack of it, whatever.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
That's so true. And then I'm gonna like level up that post, Melissa. One of the posts that gets the most views that I on my website, I have had it for like 5 years, is that my first year of editing with indie authors, I sent them a questionnaire of like 5 questions of what it was like for them to write a book with me. And it was like 5 questions. And then I just compiled them all together, and it ended up being 3 blog posts, not one, because it was just too long. And it's each author, it's asking the question and the response from each author and linking to their book, right? To create more SEO traffic, to show the author that I'm supporting them. But all I did was write the questions and put them together on a page, and that's it. And it's the post that gets the most views that clearly
Yeah,
tells other people, oh, she's worked with other authors or she's helped other
yeah,
authors,
yeah.
create those books.
And
So
you've highlighted something really important there, Linda, which we should mention about content marketing. And that is the thing about content marketing is even if you sweat your guts over that first post for 3 weeks, you publish that and it works for you forever. And there's not many times where you can say that. So when we think about the editing work we do, it's a one-to-one transaction. Like we do the editing and we get the fee, and then that's it until another job comes along. But with content, you invest the time and then you just like set and forget, and it just keeps working for you. I mean, yeah, by
yeah,
ideally you promote it every now and then, but sometimes you won't need to. Sometimes people will. The stuff that people visit most on my website is like, sometimes it's like you, Linda, it's posts I wrote 5, 6 years ago, and they're still popular because the problems haven't changed.
yeah, yeah. And go back and I look at them and I'm appalled that I wrote like that. I go and like I
I know,
re-edit them because now I'm like I don't speak like that anymore, and so
I
I'm
know, I
so
know,
embarrassed.
I
But it's
know.
the one that gets
Yeah,
the most. But
yeah.
Adam, would you like to go next with your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Um, Hi there. Louise, thank
Hi.
you so much. Thank you sorry, I'm dressed like it's winter. I have energy efficiency issues with my house. Um, Thank you so much for this. This has been really fascinating. I have, if I may be so bold, I actually have two questions. One is kind of, you and Linda both were talking earlier in the conversation about not being afraid to run experiments, but well, one idea that came up was like, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I'm just kind of curious if you could maybe share an example of when you tried something and then discovered, yeah, this really isn't actually working. Like just the process of like identifying, yeah, I need to move away from this. This is not really hitting the spot. And then my second question may be related to that, and Linda and others will maybe laugh because I've brought this up in many different settings, but this is still a nut that I'm trying to crack. Could you maybe talk a little bit about how you budget your energy, not just time, but your energy to do all the things that you want to do?
Mm,
Like,
mm,
because I have a growing list of things I want to blog about, but usually by the time I get around to, like, my plate is clear enough to blog, I'm like, I just have zero energy left to do that.
mm.
Um, yeah, so I guess those are
Yeah.
my questions.
I'm just making a couple of notes there. So the first one was about oh yeah, dealing with something or the process you go through when to identify whether something's working or not. So what I do is I some of it's like a little bit organic, but I do have an official process where once a year I sit down, it's usually at the end of my tax year, and I look I do a business review. And we have a section in this in one of the one of the notes from the podcast books. I can't remember which one, sorry. And I just take a really honest look at what's working, what's not working, and how is that making me feel, which kind of relates to your second question. So it's a very reflective process. It sounds awful doing an annual business review, but actually it's just a really good, hard, honest look. And again, I might talk about it with Denise, if I want to, with a friend, but I'm just I I'll do it myself as well. I look at like which clients did I enjoy working with, and which ones didn't I, and why? What were the problems there? Is it something I can fix? Is it something that I can fix with better communication on my website? I'll just give you a tiny, tiny little example of something that happened recently, which I realized I'd come unstuck with. A client had got to the stage where they'd actually filled in my booking form and effectively signed a contract. And in his email, he just summarized what his expectations were. And even though I'd asked him to check a certain web page and, this is my service, la 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 la, alarm bells rang immediately. And he hadn't sent me any money at that point, which was a good thing. So I went back to him and I said, it sounds to me like you're expecting a developmental edit here, not a line edit. Did you check this page? And also it was quite clear that, well, he wanted a developmental edit, but also a full proofread that would make, we were just not. I realized that whatever I thought I was doing to communicate what service he was going to get, I had missed the mark. And fortunately, we stopped it in time and we had an honest conversation. And anyway, we didn't go ahead, and that's fine. But what it made me realize was that I needed an extra paragraph on my website, on that page, just saying, please note that this service does not include la 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 la. So it was an easy fix, but I hadn't it that web page has been the way it is for years, for several years now. I didn't realize that was a problem, and it, it it just was one of those situations where I realized that something wasn't quite working, and it was something I could fix, and I could fix quickly. Um, Now, okay, that was a one-off thing that I attended to there and then in the moment, but that's kind of what I use my annual business reviews for. They're a chance to sit down and go, what's making me miserable? What's making me happy? This I know we've moved on to the second part of your question, but it's all the same thing really. It's not just about who's paying who, where am I getting most business from? What kinds of clients are contacting me? Where do they live? Um, does that tell me anything about kind of where my messaging's working or where it's not working? Um, are they paying on time? And if they're not, what can I do about it? And are they making me happy? Or is the work I'm doing making me miserable? And if so, what is it about? Why am I attracting people like that? So I just think making space in your schedule, however busy you are, at least once a year, to really have a good hard look at what's working and what's not working is just, I think it pays dividends in the longer run. Um uh so that
Yeah.
would be my advice to you, because it structures it in the same way that if you did a piece of work, Adam, you wouldn't dream of not invoicing for it, would you? I mean, I hope you wouldn't. I mean,
No.
so in the same way, it's trying to build in that idea that a business review is just a thing that we do as part of working on our business in the same way as invoicing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to say, I think the business component of being a freelance editor gets addressed, but is never, in my experience, is never taken with the same weight as the
Yeah.
editing experience that I need to have. And they really,
Mm.
if I could go back, that would probably be one of the things. I'd be like more focused on the business structure, on the contract, on what I'm agreeing to do, what I'm not going to do, because it just goes hand in hand with the work that I'm doing and
Mm.
running a business.
Mm.
And I'm not doing this for charity or for fun. I'm
Yeah.
doing it to survive. So
Yeah.
yeah, having those
Yeah.
systems in place and checking. And Adam, we do, and you know this too, because we do a quarterly meetup where we talk about goals at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. So I'm going to be asking you some questions in a few weeks, probably. Maybe prepare the
Yeah.
homework. But well, we are out of time. If there's any quick last question or anything that anybody wants to add.
I'll just add one that's been posted
Yeah.
in there from Alan. Alan wanted to know
Yes.
when the Kindle, they will be, Alan. The notes will be on Kindle. That's because of Linda. Denise and I are in the process of getting our colleague to create them in the right type of, I don't know,
Format.
Mobi or EPUB files or whatever she's doing. I've already made the covers. As soon as we've got them, they'll go up. I would say we're hoping maybe, if we're lucky, December, but it may be January. But we're aiming for December, but within the next couple of months.
You'll let us know, right? You have to let us know when those are out so we can bombard people here and start getting the word out as well.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, so Louise has given us a discount code. I put it in the chat. I'm going to put it again also at the Networking Studio event page where we had this call today. It's on for courses. It's for any kind of digital download, so that'll be available to all of you. It does expire on the 30th, so this is the time.
But you know what? I'm going to have a chat with Denise about maybe creating a bundle of these 5 books in the e-version format.
Okay.
And then
That makes sense.
then we can do a discount because we can do it direct. And
Perfect.
and then I will let you know, Linda. And then if you want,
yeah,
absolutely,
we
can go not via Amazon, perhaps. I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
I can't do the bundle on Amazon, I don't think. But yeah, we'll try and do it. We'll try and do it through the back door kind of thing. But I'll let you know, and then you can tell everyone here.
Excellent. Well, let this meeting be proof that Louise Harnby does exist, that she does listen to our questions, that she is for real, and that she's an amazing, amazing editor and a dear colleague and friend. So we hope to see more of you next year. Have a great rest of the week, Louise. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really lovely to chat to you all and to hear your questions. And it looks like a really lovely community. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like,
They are the rock stars. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
All right, then, my lovelies. Take care.
We'll be in touch. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.